This video is brought to you by Next Level Warfare. Make sure to join me this weekend for an epic gaming session. The details are in the description below. Now let's talk about a fighter jet that often gets mistaken for something it isn't. The first time I saw this aircraft, I thought to myself, wow, Japan finally bought the F-16. It looked so similar that you could easily confuse the two at first glance. But that was far from reality. The Mitsubishi F-2 may look like an F-16, but it's an entirely different machine with its own story, and to understand why, we need to go back to the late 1980s. Japan at the time had the F-15J, a formidable air superiority fighter based on the American F-15 Eagle, and it gave Japan one of the best air-to-air platforms in the world. But they had a problem. The F-15J was optimized for air dominance and wasn't a true multi-role aircraft. Japan needed something more flexible, a support fighter as they called it, which could handle both air-to-air and air-to-ground roles and, more importantly, conduct anti-ship missions. Being an island nation dependent on maritime trade, Japan's defense strategy placed huge importance on controlling sea lanes and protecting against naval threats. Japan initially believed it could design and build this aircraft on its own. They had some experience developing the F-1 attack jet and assembling F-15s under license, so confidence was high. Two designs were proposed. Mitsubishi suggested a delta-wing jet with canards, and Kawasaki presented something that looked a lot like an F-18 Hornet. But the reality was harsh. Building a cutting-edge fighter from scratch was going to be astronomically expensive and beyond Japan's current technological base. Critical systems like advanced avionics, radar, and high-performance engines would take years and billions to develop. So the Japanese government decided to seek a partner for joint development. Europe offered the Tornado, but it wasn't suited to Japan's needs. The United States had two proposals on the table, one based on the F-18 and another on the F-16 Fighting Falcon. At that time, General Dynamics was working on an advanced F-16 concept called the Agile Falcon, which featured a bigger wing and improved range. It never went into U.S. service, but for Japan, it was the perfect starting point. And that's where the story of the F-2 begins. Now, some people like to call the F-2 a copy of the F-16, but that's just not true. By the time the F-2 design was finalized, 95% of its components and drawings were different. It was essentially a new aircraft with Japanese DNA. The fuselage was slightly longer, about half a meter, but the wings were a whopping 25% larger. That change alone had major implications. Larger wings meant more lift, more fuel capacity, and room for additional weapon stations. The F-2 ended up with 13 hardpoints, 2 more than the standard F-16, which allowed it to carry extra fuel tanks or heavy anti-ship missiles like the ASM-1 and ASM-2. Its maximum takeoff weight jumped from 19 tons on the F-16 to 22 tons on the F-2, and the combat radius increased by about 25%, which is crucial for a country made up of islands. The tailplanes were slightly larger too, and the F-2 added a braking parachute, something the American F-16 doesn't have, to allow operations from shorter runways. Under the skin, the aircraft used extensive composite materials to reduce weight and improve stealth characteristics. Mitsubishi even developed its own radar-absorbent material applied to key surfaces like the nose and intake edges. These details are still highly classified. The engine was the same as the late-model F-16 Block 50, a General Electric F-110 turbofan producing over 28,000 pounds of thrust with afterburner, but the aerodynamics and structure of the F-2 gave it an edge in certain performance aspects. One of the most groundbreaking features of the F-2 was its radar. It carried the J/APG-1, the world's first operational AESA radar in a production fighter. Yes, even before the F-22 Raptor. This was a massive technological leap. AESA radars scan faster, resist jamming, provide incredible tracking capability, and operate in low probability of intercept modes, which means the enemy has a harder time detecting your radar emissions. Today, AESA is standard on 5th-generation fighters, but back then, Japan was leading the way. The cockpit of the F-2 was fully modernized with large multifunction LCD displays, replacing the old analog gauges. It retained the fly-by-wire system pioneered by the F-16 but added an analog backup for safety. All these upgrades made the F-2 one of the most advanced fourth-generation fighters in the world when it entered service. But it wasn't without limitations. It wasn't built for CAD missions, so no AGM-88 HARM missiles. Japan's constitution forbade the use of long-range standoff weapons like cruise missiles, so those were out as well. Early versions didn't even have targeting pods for precision strikes, though that was fixed later with systems like the sniper pod. The F-2 also didn't integrate NATO's Link 16 data link, which limited network-centric warfare capabilities. On top of that, the program faced serious political challenges. After the Toshiba scandal, where Japanese firms were accused of sharing sensitive tech with the Soviets, many in Washington didn't trust Japan with American fighter technology. There was talk of killing the program. In the end, a compromise was reached. Japan could proceed, but any technology they developed had to be shared with the US, while Japan's access to American tech would be restricted. It wasn't ideal for Tokyo, but it kept the project alive. When it came to its intended role, the F-2 excelled at anti-ship warfare. It could carry Japan's domestically developed ASM-1 and ASM-2 missiles, and later, the ASM-3, a supersonic, ramjet-powered missile with a range of over 400 kilometers. This weapon gave the F-2 serious teeth in maritime strike missions. For air-to-air combat, the F-2 carries Japanese-built AAM-3 and AAM-4 missiles, the latter comparable to the AIM-120 AMRAAM. In fact, the AAM-4B was the first missile in the world to use an AESA seeker head when it was introduced in 2010, another example of Japan pushing radar technology forward. Production of the F-2 began in the 1990s, but the program never reached the numbers originally planned. Japan wanted over 140 aircraft, but in the end, only 94 were built. The cost was a big reason. Each F-2 ended up costing far more than a standard F-16, and critics argued that Japan could have saved billions by simply buying American jets. Still, for Japan, the F-2 wasn't just about getting a fighter, it was about developing domestic expertise and maintaining an aerospace industry capable of future innovation. The last F-2 rolled off the production line in 2011. There were ideas for an upgraded F-2 variant with conformal fuel tanks and other improvements, but Japan eventually shifted focus to the F-35 Lightning II for its next-generation needs. That said, the F-2 is not going away anytime soon. It's expected to serve until the 2030s, and it's still a very capable platform thanks to upgrades and modern weapon integration. Of course, the F-2's story hasn't been without drama. In 2011, the devastating earthquake and tsunami struck Japan, damaging 18 F-2s on the ground. 13 of them were eventually repaired, but 5 had to be written off completely. The jet has also had its share of real-world encounters. In 2013, F-2s were scrambled multiple times to intercept Russian aircraft entering Japanese airspace, including Su-27s and a Tu-142 maritime patrol plane. These intercepts prove that even though the F-2 was never built in large numbers, it remains an important part of Japan's air defense network. And honestly, it's a beautiful aircraft. Sleek, agile, packed with advanced tech, and painted in that striking blue camouflage scheme that makes it stand out among modern fighters. It's a shame it wasn't produced in greater numbers because it truly represents the best of Japanese aerospace engineering blended with American design influence. The F-2 might not be as famous as the F-16 or the F-35, but it carved out its own unique legacy. Before you go, if you've ever wondered what it feels like to fly something like this, you can try it for yourself in War Thunder, the most detailed vehicle combat game ever created. It features over 2,500 vehicles from tanks to jets, and everything is modeled with incredible detail. Realistic physics, damage modeling, and chaotic multiplayer battles make it a must-play. You can download it for free on PC, consoles, or even mobile. Use the link in the description or the pinned comment to grab your bonus pack, which includes premium vehicles, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium time, but it's only available for a limited time. So join me and millions of other players in the skies and on the battlefield. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.